Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I'm sharing some new cards made with the latest My Monthly Hero Arts kit. Today, I'm using the main kit for the month of July, but there are tons of options for add-ons available, and I'll be sure to link to all of those down in the YouTube description box below the video. But for now, let's get started looking at the stamps and coordinating dies for the main kit. This is the 6x8 stamp set that comes in the main kit. The main kit also has dies for all these stamps, has some really cute mushroom washi tape, some ink cubes, and some adorable sequins. So when I have a big stamp set like this and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to use first, I like to do a basic little stamp out of the whole thing. So I just laid it in my Misty and inked it. I'm not putting each stamp on the Misty door, I'm just laying it inside my Misty and inking it up and then stamping it really just basically on some scratch paper so I can see what I have. Now it's time to take those adorable stamps and dies and make some cards. For this first card, I'm going to use different colors of ink to create a small stamp background. So I'm going to start with my sentiment in black so that I avoid that and make sure there's room for it. And then I'm just taking an acrylic block and one of the stamps from the stamp set and 3 different colors of Hero Arts ink, and I'm just stamping them all over this background here. So I like to have several of each color stamped out. I definitely like to stamp off the edge, so I'm using a glass mat behind me so that I can just quickly clean that up really easily. And that's just one way to make that really colorful and fun background. Now for the foreground, I stamped several of the images from the 6x8 stamp set, and I'm stamping them with Copic friendly ink, and I use my Stamper Secret Debbie tool to get even pressure, and sometimes my magnet gets in the way. It's no big deal, just close the door again, and that's how you get that perfect impression every time. Now when I'm using Copic friendly ink, even if I let it dry, I do like to just heat set it really quickly. If you're going to stamp and then Copic color in the same day, that's always a good idea. I find that even when it seems dry, it bleeds with the alcohol markers unless you really heat set it. I'm just doing really basic Copic coloring. I am going to do some blending and shading around the mushroom because it's large enough that you can really get in there with a couple of different colors and get a little bit of shading and shadows here and there. But the little gnome guy, he's so tiny, he's so cute that I'm just gonna do some basic filling in, and I'm gonna use 2 different colors on the flowers, a little green and a little yellow. That's another way to, if you don't have a ton of yellows, say, just add a little hint of green to the bottoms of those flowers. I did feel like it needed a little bit more green on the background. I like the green because it kind of freshens it up. It doesn't look fully fall or autumn background when it's got that bright spring green to it. So now I am just going to pop up all of the little elements that I stamped, colored, and cut out on some foam tape. Did have to cut the foam squares a little bit for the flowers, but other than that, this is done. And I love creating backgrounds like that with multicolors and one stamp. For this next card, I'm going to use one small stamp from the stamp set again, but I'm going to heat emboss. So I am just going to cover this entire panel with anti-static powder tool and brush away the real lumps or excess with my sweep brush from Tonic Studios. I'm going to do the sentiment first again. This way I can make sure that I don't cover it up with my background. And I'm going to stamp it with embossing ink, and I always stamp those a couple of times, especially for the sentiment because I want it to be clear. So I am going to use white Hero Arts embossing powder on the sentiment so it really stands out on that Hero Arts navy cardstock in the background there. And I'm going to heat set that before moving on to the panel. I am going to use more anti-static because I have been handling that panel and I don't want fingerprints to cause the embossing powder that I'm going to use to stick to places that I don't want. This time I am going to use an acrylic block, and I'm not going to worry too much about perfect stamping here. Like I normally do with the sentiment, I want it to be perfect and I want it to really show up all of the letters. This is just my background. Now I'm going to pour white satin pearl Hero Arts embossing powder on the top, and I'm not sure why I'm not working on some copy paper or something. I really made a mess. I did clean it all up and put it back in the jar, but this would have been a lot easier if I had something underneath me when I was pouring this embossing powder on top. but you can see that right now it looks pretty bright, but when you heat set it, it kind of makes just a shiny halo of color on top of that dark background. So you can see as you heat set it, it really kind of just turns into a raised pearl look of the navy cardstock. So that's just a really easy way to take 1 or 2 small stamps from the stamp set and make your background. I'm going to tap some of the Hero Arts white paint on top. It's their white watercolor, and just tap it with a brush to get some little sprinkles or sparkles in the background there. And then I popped up one of the little images that has the tree stump and little fairy sitting on top. And then I'm just going to mat it on some holographic cardstock. I thought this was kind of a magical look to the background, which already has that pretty pearl images of the flowers. So that's just an easy way to use 2 stamps on an embossed background. For this last card, I'm going to use 1 stamp, 2 different colors, but I'm going to stamp it in a shape. So I've die cut a large circle, and I'm going to use the grid of my glass mat to help me line up this stamp in 4 different places, like I'm moving around a clock on my circle. And then I'm going to go in the middle of each of those 2 little swirls or whatever that is. Super, super cute. It's just a nice fun pattern that you're creating. And then I'm going to move it down a little bit and go in between each of the yellow ones with the navy ink. So again, just using that circle as a template to move around and create a shaped pattern background with 1 stamp and 2 colors of ink. Once again, I did stamp a little image with Copic Safe ink, and I am really heat setting it. If you ever have smudging or smearing with your ink, it's probably just not dry, even though it seems totally dry. So just always remember to heat set before you go in and Copic color. These little images are so tiny. I'm only using 2 colors for most of them, just to add a little bit of blending and shading, but not too crazy, and this really gets colored in very quickly. I always love the little gnomes wearing red. I think they're so cute, and then with the blue, I just think, and the yellow, this is a really fun color combination. So I'm going to hold the dies in place and cut them out. This time I am stamping my sentiment on the same navy cardstock and heat embossing it in the Hero Arts white embossing powder, and I actually have 2 sentiments that I stamped at the bottom of an A2 piece of cardstock. So I have them with enough space in between that I can cut them up. Then I'm going to heat set them both, and then I put them in my trimmer with the excess paper hanging out so I can see exactly where I'm trimming the top, and I know exactly how thick it'll be. So that's just a really easy way to make a sentiment strip, is to stamp at the very bottom of the paper and then cut off the top. Just makes it a lot easier, I think, so you don't have to cut both ends. Now I'm just going to add some tape runner to the little stamped die cut colored in image that I created. I'm going to open up my circle card so that I try and get it straight with the fold at the top. I think I may have still gotten it a little bit crooked, but definitely would have been a lot more crooked if I had no idea where the fold was. So now I'm just going to pop up my sentiment, and that's a third way to create a stamped background with just a few colors of ink and some small stamps from the kit. I hope you enjoyed seeing this month's Hero Arts My Monthly Hero main kit in action. If you want to check out what I did with last month's kit, I will link to that video over here. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon.